Hi, I'm Henry, and this is a talk about vaccines for normal people. Now, just yesterday I gave this talk at a local NGO, Itemba Projects, here in KwaZulu-Natal, South Africa, and we thought it would be useful to post it so that more people can learn about what this intimidating and often confusing subject, COVID-19 vaccines, is all about. First of all, I'm no expert, but you can trust me. Why? Because I'm wearing this t-shirt that says, "Trust me, I'm a doctor." It just so happens that I am indeed a doctor. I'm a surgeon, but I'm still no expert. I take out people's gallbladders and their appendixes. I'm not an immunologist, a virologist, or even a microbiologist. I hope that will help you, because like you, this is also outside of my comfort zone, and I will try to help you make sense of all of it. I've got the advantage of having spent 12 years in medical school, so at least I understand the language. We are going to talk about caves, BS antennas, trees, muffins, factories, peaches, spiky golf balls, purple sunglasses with feathers, zombies, hijackers, F-16 jets, Reaper drones and dinosaurs, vaccines, more muffins, and then a couple of common vaccine questions, and we'll end off briefly chatting about an old Roman. Now, I don't know how many of you have ever had the opportunity to stand inside a cave and speak to the cave. It's quite amazing. You can say hi, the cave will say hi. You can say, how's your day? The cave will say, how's your day? Then you can think of just saying any old thing like, drink jik, it will cure you from COVID-19. The cave will say, drink jik, it will cure you from COVID-19. Or you can think of any old thing. You can say, don't have the vaccine, it's going to mark you with a mark of the beast and enslave you. The cave will say, don't get the COVID-19 vaccine, it will mark you with a mark of the beast and enslave you. What am I trying to say here? I am saying that the internet has become an echo chamber. When honest people like you or I don't know about some subject, we're going to do some research on the internet. But the problem is, whatever we ask the internet, whatever we say, the internet says right back at us. So often we end up more confused than what we were before. And maybe we got wrong answers to our questions, and now we believe wrong stuff. So we are no better off having consulted the echo chamber or the cave that is also the internet. Now, my hope is to help you grow some of this extremely important organ that a lovely teacher at my daughter's school taught us about the other day. It is called a bullshit antenna, and I won't offend you again by saying that crude word. I will call it a BS antenna, but what this thing does, it's an absolutely essential organ for survival on planet Earth, and it helps you to distinguish between what may be true and what appears to be utter BS. Now, in order to get your BS antennas going in the field of vaccines, I have to give you a basic structure with which you can understand how all of this works. So I'm just going to give you the tree and the branches, and then you can go and do some research on the internet, get out of the echo chamber and get some real, honest, proper leaves on your tree, the whole time utilizing your BS antenna. Let's start with a common question, and that is, would you like a muffin? To me, sometimes when I speak to people, I say, are you going to get the vaccine? They seem to deal with this question in the same way as if I ask them, would you like a muffin? And they go, I don't like blueberry muffins, maybe a chocolate muffin. Oh, you know what? Not for me, thank you. To me, it makes no sense. So we'll get back to this really difficult question. In the meantime, let's go to something far simpler. What does it mean to be alive? I'm not asking you what is the reason for life. I'm just asking you what differentiates us as humans from a stone, for instance. Well, if you go to Wikipedia, which is a clever guide to go to, it will tell you it is the ability to grow, to reproduce, and to do things, do the make things, be active, do the things of life. Now, how do we as humans actually manage this? Well, as you probably know, each one of us is made up of 30 trillion cells. The cell is the smallest living unit of all biological life forms on Earth. As you can see, a cell really looks nothing different to a peach with a stone in the middle and the flesh of the peach on the outside. If we go into the nitty-gritty of it, you will see that the stone is really just the nucleus of the cell. This is where the genetic code is stored. It's like an enormous hard disk drive, a very huge library containing all the information for everything that this cell could possibly ever want to make. And not only that, it contains all the information for all the other cells of that particular organism. So if you're a human and you go and look in a liver cell, you will find the information for a brain cell, for a spleen cell, a bone cell, all of it. Your entire blueprint is contained in the nucleus of each and every single one of your 30 trillion cells, which is rather remarkable by any measure. Anyway, quickly looking then at in the fleshy part of your peach, you will see the rough endoplastic reticulum. Now that is the factory floor where stuff are made. Now the stuff usually is proteins, and if I say, okay, proteins are made, you probably think, if I want big muscles, I need to drink protein shakes or eat meat with protein. It's not what I'm talking about at all. In living organisms, in a human, the tractors, the cars, the trains, the forklifts, the missiles, the guns, anything that is anything in a cell, in a human, is a protein. Okay? So I'm talking about something quite sophisticated, all these different proteins. So this factory floor, back to the rough endoplastic reticulum, is like those robotic welding machines that you see in a car factory that welds on a wheel and it welds on a door, and before you know it, you've got your car. Okay? Then it takes that car to the Golgi apparatus, which is the distribution center of the cell, and when you export it, it gets on the secretory vesicles and out it goes out the cell. Simple. There's a mitochondrion, that's the powerhouse, the battery, where energy is created in the cell for this factory. Now, the only thing really that's really wrong with this picture of mine is that it stands completely, it's a still frame. And the truth of the matter is this thing is moving all the time. There is so much happening. It is dividing, it is making proteins, it's fighting infections, it's doing things every millisecond of every day. But yes, it's really, at the end of the day, nothing more than a factory, each and every cell. Now, let's say, for instance, you are the foreman on duty and the guy says, "Oh, we're going to make us some tractors today." It's easy. You quickly run to the nucleus and you go into the library and you go and look for the book that says how to make a tractor, and you look at the genetic code, then you write it off on a little piece of paper. You write off what's written here in the book. And this little piece of paper, that's called messenger RNA. Then you run out with that to the factory floor, you give it to the guys there, put it in the computer, and they start welding together a chimney and a seat and two big wheels, and there you have it. You've got your tractor, which then goes to the Golgi apparatus and out it goes. Okay? It's quite simple how it works. Now, moving on to this ugly thing that you've all seen pictures of. This, on the left, is corona or a COVID-19 virus. Its real name is the SARS-CoV-2 virus, but this is the thing that gives us COVID-19. Just looking at it, you can see it looks like a spiky golf ball, doesn't it? And the weird spikes on its surface, they look obviously weird, these big red spikes. Those are the spike proteins. You know, on a cellular immunological scale, it's as good as guys walking around with purple sunglasses with feathers on them. That's how obvious those spike proteins are. Dissecting the coronavirus for a minute here, what does it consist of? Just look at it. It consists of a viral genome. Okay, that's the, in the case of corona, it's a little piece of messenger RNA. Doesn't even have DNA, just has RNA. With a little capsule and another capsule, and then on the outside you see some envelope proteins. That's it. That's the virus. Now the first thing you're going to ask me is you're going to say, but hey, where's this thing's machinery? How does this thing make proteins? Well, you've got it. Well done. It has no such machinery. A virus cannot make its own proteins. It cannot replicate on its own because it doesn't have the stuff that does that. It needs a human host in order to replicate. In fact, you can even consider a virus as not really quite alive. It's like a zombie walking around looking for a human host to give it life. How does a virus gain life? Well, you're not intimidated by this picture because you know what a nucleus is, you know what an endoplasmic reticulum is, you know everything about protein synthesis and RNA, no problem. So what happens here is, let's say we all work in a bakery, just to make this simple. So on one fine day, when someone's coughed next to you and you are not wearing your mask, look what happens at your bakery. Someone arrives at the door and goes, sorry, can I come in? And the receptionist goes there and she sees a funny guy with purple sunglasses and feathers. And she says, well, how can I help you, sir? He says, well, I'm here to sell insurance. She says, oh, by all means, come on in. And in comes the insurance salesman. And the minute he walks in the door, he takes out his big gun and he says, this is a hold up. I'm hijacking this place. Everyone under the tables. And what does he do? He takes over the factory floor. So he goes to the machinery and instead of making tractors or bread or whatever it is what your factory was making, he starts making more of himself. More COVID viruses. And look at it. He simply hijacks your cellular machinery, makes more viruses, and one insurance salesman came in and 100 of them goes out, and it goes in and infects the next cell. So back to the bakery analogy, you're not making bread anymore. Our particular factory is now making COVID-19 viruses. The question, how does this virus, the COVID-19 virus, how does it cause disease? Someone next to you coughs and you inhale, because you're not wearing your mask, you inhale 1,000 of these viruses, which go into your respiratory epithelium. What's respiratory epithelium? Well, those are just little cells sitting in your alveoli. Here you can see the lungs, which consist of small little air bags called alveoli. They're very clever. They allow oxygen to get onto a protein called hemoglobin that's then carried to your powerhouses in your cells so that it can give energy for all the work that the cells need to do. So anyway, oxygen needs to get onto the blood and carbon dioxide needs to get out. But hey, if these alveolar membrane cells are now hijacked by COVID-19 and they can't do their job, obviously you can expect that you may have a problem with breathing. The truth of the matter, and we'll get to that, is that your own immune system plays a very important part in actually making you ill with COVID-19. We'll get to that. Just if we can briefly say, obviously, wearing a mask, social distancing, washing our hands, and cleaning surfaces so that we can kill viruses that are zombies, lying around there, walking around, floating around, without a human host. These are all good ideas. And we need to do this. We need to protect ourselves from inhaling them, and you get it. And if we didn't do these things, the whole pandemic would have been far worse than what it is now. But I still have to ask you the question, how's this working out for you? And looking at these harrowing statistics, it's from the 7th of May, you all know this, 156 million COVID cases, 3 million deaths. Yes, encouraging, so many people have recovered, but we know not only the medical and the physical damage caused to people, but the economic devastation caused by COVID-19. Many of us feel it in our bones. Many people have lost their jobs, have had to take a drop in income. It's really just a very unpleasant business. It's very much like an enormous bushfire, if you think about it, this whole pandemic thing. The more trees that are busy burning, the more new trees will catch fire. And once it's been through the woods for the first time and the driest of trees have burnt out, when it comes again, well, maybe it's going to be a bit harder to burn through it again, but there will again be trees that will catch fire. Fact is, currently, the fire is raging higher than what it's ever raged since the start of this thing, of this whole pandemic. So we're not winning. Horrible picture, you've all heard about it, what's currently happening in India. People are being cremated in parking lots just to deal with the bodies of the dead. This is how bad it is. Now, you have to ask yourself, how do we fight back? How does our bodies fight back? Let's look at that first. How does the immune system deal with COVID-19? Now, the good news I have for you is that you have more than enough soldiers, missiles, tanks, anything that you can imagine, atom bombs, that can kill yourself, that can kill this coronavirus and yourself 10 times over every day. It's not a very encouraging thought, is it? So the fact is, I'll explain. The point is, you don't have a lack of firepower. You actually have even too much firepower for this business. What is wrong with this picture? Well, there's a tank driving through a suburb where normal people live. They have bakeries, they have schools, they have churches, and here's a tank. When we think about war, we have this romantic idea in our minds that at least people would have the good grace to go to some far-off desert and go and shoot the living daylights out of one another, and then you've got a winning army and a losing army, and then the whole thing is solved. Unfortunately, in the human body, microbiological warfare doesn't work like that. We don't have the luxury of a far-off desert where we can go and make war. All of it is urban warfare, which means the fight takes place between people's houses, in their cities, in their towns. And very often, the end of the war is that it looks like this. Total devastation. Now, what is the most important question that your army, my army, needs to answer in our fight against microorganisms? By the way, because we don't feel it in our bones, we think that everything is sort of okay until we have an obvious infection. And then maybe there's something that our bodies are busy fighting. Fact of the matter is, we as human beings live in a hostile microbiological environment. We're fighting infections every day, all day. We don't even know about it because our immune systems work so fantastically well that they just deal with all the attacks on us. I've promised you that this is a talk for normal people, so I don't expect you to remember any big words, but I'm going to ask you to remember only these two words for me today, and that is innate and adaptive. Innate means the stuff that you're born with, it's just ready, it's there, it's the first line of defense. And adaptive is what you learn over time and then also remember. So if we look at the innate immunity, you will see that that is our immune mechanism. When we have a new infection, that has to be the first line of defense for the first 0 to 12 hours, a bit further than that, and then slowly but surely our adaptive immunity takes over. Now these are the specialist cells that kill one thing and one thing only, and it doesn't cause collateral damage. You'll see all kinds of names there, big words: epithelial barriers, phagocytes, dendritic cells, NK or natural killer cells. On the adaptive immunity side, B lymphocytes, plasma cells, antibodies, APCs or antigen presenting cells, T lymphocytes and effector T cells. Let's just explain this in a way that you can understand and remember it. Your innate immunity. First, looking at this big barbed wire. It's not easy to get to you because you've got a skin everywhere, you've got barriers to organisms that want to invade you. Once they have invaded, you've got fantastic F-16 fighter jets with massive firepower, the natural killer cells that just gets firing at these microorganisms that have now arrived. You've got phagocytes, macrophages, and a host of other cells that eat organisms. They like big T-Rexes, just chomping up these invaders. Then you've got a very interesting system. It's not that prolific, but with COVID-19 it plays an important role. It's the interferon system, which interferes with the infection. Now how that works is, if in your bakery the insurance salesman with the funny sunglasses have just hijacked the place, people get on their walkie-talkies and they speak to the cells. They speak to the cells close to them. So they tell the guy in the gym next door, the nail parlor across the street. They say, "Hey, whoa, there's trouble here. We've just been invaded by insurance, blah blah blah." So salesman, take care. And then those cells know that they must put up their defenses when the insurance salesman or the COVID viruses come to them. They're not going to open the door. Now, it's interesting, but that it appears as if the reason that many young people die from COVID-19, if I say many young people, I know it's only 2.5% of all the people that do die of COVID-19, but as if there's some problem with their interferon system. And then going to the biggest and probably the most important part of the innate immunity, this is your massive worldwide communication system. In the body we call it the cytokine system. It's a immensely complex, amazing series and cascades of hormones, really, that's secreted by cells, and it goes and gets into the bloodstream, circulates through the body, and it raises the alarm. It's like when you're in that bakery and the guys are getting in, you're getting onto social media, Instagram post, Facebook, take a picture of the guy and you send it all across, so that first of all you can warn everybody that there's something going on here. You can call for help. They're going to start sending the special forces, the choppers, the things to where the fight is here. Without the cytokine system, our immunity cannot function. So it is an integral part of it. But interestingly, in COVID-19, and in many other diseases, but in COVID-19 there is something known as a cytokine storm that can erupt. And that is when there's such a massive overflow of this messaging throughout your body, that suddenly your entire military system everywhere starts reacting. And they just take out the big guns and they start shooting indiscriminately left, right and center. And this is typically when after a week of being actually okay, a patient suddenly takes a dip. And his lungs, you get a white out of his lungs, and he needs to go onto a ventilator, and his kidneys pack up, and his liver packs up, and his heart packs up. Everything packs up because of this cytokine storm thing. All right. The point of the fact of the matter is that with this first line of defense, although it's a magnificent, wonderful, and a life-preserving thing, oftentimes the outcome of the battle is that the town or the city is razed to the ground. It's devastated. You can almost liken it to this guy. Let's call him Bull. That's your first line of defense. You can see he's got a wild look in his eyes, he's got a nice big gun there, and this guy's trigger happy. You know, if he sees anything that moves, he just starts shooting. Moving straight on to your adaptive immunity. What's adaptive again? Well, that's how you adapt. That's what you've learned. So, what's the deal with the adaptive immunity? That very first picture is the essence of it. This is when an antigen-presenting cell goes over to the dead insurance salesman and he takes the, because dear old Bull has his uses, hey? He's killed a couple of these guys, and then the antigen-presenting cell takes these purple sunglasses with the weird feathers off, goes to the door, and when the soldiers, the Spec Force soldiers come by, says, this is what they're wearing. They're wearing these funny sunglasses. They've got these funny spike proteins on their surface. And then the Spec Force soldier goes to the command base, and he gets everyone going and says, these are the guys that we must target. And then they start making drones. I don't know if you know what this horrible machine here is, but this is a Reaper drone used by the US and by the UK armed forces. What makes it such an astounding piece of military equipment, and horrible at the same time, is that it can kill with such precision. Literally, if you're driving on a busy highway and you're a terrorist and you've got 10 bombs here and let's say 2 suicide bombers, and you're driving in a busy 5-lane highway, one of these, in the night, everything's dark, one of these Reaper drones up there in the air, you can't even see the thing. Can see you down there, can identify you if it can see you're wearing the sunglasses, funny purple sunglasses, and it will pinpoint blast a missile onto you, blast your entire purple van to smithereens without damaging the cars next to you. Of course, the people have a bit of a shock. Goodness, what just happened here? And even then, if 2 or 3 of the insurance salespeople still creeps out of the burning purple van, the drone will blast each one of them without any of the bystanders that have come to see what the hell's going on here, without any of them getting hurt. So the fact is, it's an absolute precision killing machine. This Reaper drone represents your T lymphocytes that actually need to go to the factories that have now been hijacked and that are now producing COVID viruses, to all the cells that now need to be destroyed because they've now turned into COVID-19 factories. These T lymphocytes go there and it will take out our bakery. Sorry for all of us that were still inside, but at least the gym next door and the nail parlor across the street, no one there will get hurt. These are more drones. They are the immunoglobulins that are made by the plasma cells, and they just circulate through the blood, and there are just millions and millions of them, and they are horrible things. If they see, well, if you're an insurance salesman with purple glasses with feathers, they are horrible things. If you're anyone else, they are wonderful things, because these things will pinpoint these funny people and kill them, assassinate them, take them out, just like that, without hurting anyone next to them. There are T helper cells that support this whole thing, and then extremely important, memory cells. When your adaptive immunity responds to an infection after this antigen presenting business, then your memory cells are going to remember that you had this war. And in future, they will be ready. They will have, within half an hour, they can regenerate all these dangerous drones and kill Spec Force soldiers to go and take on this one and only particular microorganism, in the case of COVID-19, the COVID-19 virus, should it invade again. What does your city look like after you've had a war with your adaptive immunity being in charge of things? This is what the city looks like because of the directed, specific killing of only the bad guys and not the good guys with them. You can almost liken it to this guy. Let's call him Jack. You can see that guy is the real deal. He's got a laser gun, he's calm, he's collected. But if you're on his wrong side, I've got bad news for you. You're going down, baby. This is your adaptive immune response. Just to spell it out again, how this is the critical moment in moving from the innate immune system to the adaptive immune system. It's when an antigen-presenting cell, it's usually one of these T-Rex dinosaurs, chomps up the microorganism, and as it digests it, it sees, hey, what's this thing that's come up in my digestive system? It's a pair of purple sunglasses with weird feathers. Let's give this to the Space Force guys, that they know how to identify the enemy. How do vaccines work? I'm sure by now you just know how vaccines work. I mean, you can think for yourself. With the information you have now, you'll be able to think up how vaccines should work, wouldn't you? Because remember, we said that if we can give a unique identifying characteristic of that infecting microorganism, in this case the COVID-19 virus, we said the funny purple sunglasses, in reality those spike proteins. If we can just give this to the Space Force guys, they are going to be able to start doing their thing. Well, there are different types, but most of them are mRNA vaccines, and let me tell you how they work. mRNA, what am I talking about? Messenger RNA, you know all about it. I told you, those were your little notes when you ran into the factory to go and write off how to make a tractor. Yes, that's that little piece of paper that you wrote off. That is messenger RNA, mRNA. What did you do with that? You ran to the factory floor, to the protein making machine, and you fed it into the computer, and they just started making these proteins. So how does an mRNA vaccine work? Well, they give you a jab in your arm containing little bits of mRNA, not from the virus, but that has the same genetic information as the spike protein in it. Okay? So they're not giving you the COVID-19 virus genetic code. That would be a bit silly, wouldn't it? Only the spike protein's code gets injected into your muscles there. And then it goes to the factory floor, where your own body starts making what? COVID-19 viruses? No. It starts making spike proteins. Spike proteins. Which then go to the surface, and very quickly your body says, hey, what are these funny spike proteins? Purple sunglasses with feathers. These things don't belong here. You know, we need to host an immune response. And they give it to the Space Force guys, and they start making all those killer drones. And that is why sometimes after getting the vaccine, you may have a sore throat, you may have a fever, you may feel off color for 2 days. It's just your immune system doing its thing. But really, all that a COVID-19 vaccine is it's a small little heads up given to your cells, not going to your DNA, just going to your factory floor, where your own factory floor will decode that messenger RNA signal, make these abnormal proteins. Your body will see, hey, these things are foreign and we don't like them. Let's host an immune response, and we're also going to remember it. So the memory cells are going to remember what this spike protein looks like. Okay, good. And then what then? Well, then, on that fateful day, when you have your date with COVID-19, when those insurance salesmen knock, first of all, the secretary at the door is going to know, oh, I know this guy. I know him. And she will say, all right, sure, come in. She'll open the door. And as the guy starts walking in, who jumps out from behind the pillar? 5 of these guys. And it blasts the smoke out of poor old COVID-19. And yes, when he does manage to hijack 2 or 3 cells, who will arrive? The Reaper drones. And it will take those cells out immediately, before old Bull even gets going. Your adaptive immune response will deal with the situation. And that is really what you want. That's what vaccines are all about. Now, here's me getting my vaccine 7 weeks ago. In all honesty, I only felt as if someone gave me a punch on my shoulder. I ran 10 Ks the same afternoon. I cycled 40 Ks the next morning. I didn't know about a thing. But even if you're not that lucky and you do have a bit of a flu-like symptoms, rest assured it's your immune system doing its thing. Okay? Let's briefly talk about a couple of common vaccine questions. The very first one, the muffin question. You remember, people dealing with the question, would you like a COVID-19 vaccine? Not choc chip, blueberry, no, I think just not for me. I think one of the big problems that we as humans have is we like to feel comfortable. When it comes to the choice of, are you going to take the vaccine, yes or no, there is no point of comfort. You cannot say, no, what, thank you, not for me, and say, and think by yourself, well, look, you felt a little bit intimidated by this question, so you moved back from it and said, no, not for me, pass me by. Because not taking the vaccine is making a very firm decision. What you're deciding for is you deciding to give the zombie life. You're deciding that on that fateful day, when you have your date with COVID-19, and regrettably you can't escape that reality, it is coming sooner or later, then you are saying, well, okay, I'd rather let Bill and the boys do their thing, just let my innate immunity give it their best shot. Maybe I get lucky, maybe I don't. Maybe you're a young person and you think, oh, well, I'm not going to get particularly ill. Well, maybe you don't get particularly ill, but you will turn into a living, breathing virus factory. So, point is, there is no, you're not choosing muffins here. You have to choose one way or the other. Am I going to have it? Yes or no. Saying no doesn't mean nothing's going to happen because you are going to meet COVID-19. Common question, look, it was developed way too fast. I just can't trust it. Well, it is true that the COVID-19 vaccines were developed far quicker than anything before. But hey, if you think about it, billions, literally billions of dollars and euros and yen and rubles were pushed in by governments and by big pharma and by humankind to try and find a timely solution before we are burned down to the ground. I can assure you that all the trials have gone through the normal phase 1, phase 2, phase 3. Yes, sure, some of them happen concurrently. Yes, some of them has been happening maybe slightly faster than what they would have in years gone past for different vaccines that were developed. But consider the urgency of this situation. Doesn't it make sense that we should do our very best to develop a vaccine as quickly as we can to stop this thing that's destroying our way of life, to stop it in its track? So, when people say, I just can't trust it, I'm thinking, and you're complaining? Consider COVID-19. Consider the devastation that it's wrought. Do you want to complain about the fact that everything was put in fast forward? Rest assured that the quality control mechanisms of individual countries, medicine control councils, and the CDC, they've used their normal, usual, extremely stringent quality control mechanisms to ensure that it's done in a responsible and an accountable way. They are going to alter my DNA. Well, look, you guys have now fortunately been given a crash course in how these things work. You know that the vaccine doesn't get close to your DNA. It just goes to the factory floors, to the rough endoplastic reticulum, where proteins are being made. And heck, no man, they're just decoding the spike protein in your rough endoplastic reticulum, and then they give it to the adaptive immune system. So there's absolutely no talk of DNA altering. The vaccine is going to cause blood clots. Well, one of the problems with the speed at which the vaccine is developed is that all of us are now riveted, we are now on the edge of our chairs looking at this whole process. And then when a small little thing happens, we get extremely anxious about it, and and then we get confused again. If you can just chat about this thing about the serious blood clots that have been seen with the AstraZeneca and the Janssen vaccine. In fact, it was 6 in 10 million, actually 6 in 6.8 million youngish women who had the vaccine that had sinus cavernosus thrombosis. It's a unusual blood clot in this big vein in your brain here. Yes, it's very serious. But how should you react to that? If you are the drug-making company or the regulator, you have to say, well, stop everything until we figured this out. Then they go and they figure it out, and they do the math, and they see, okay, 6 in 6.8 million, that's 1 in a million that this thing happened. Then they say, well, all right, how many people in this age group would have died from COVID-19? Then they say, well, if you do the quick calculation, in the 18 to 35% age group, your mortality, the chance of dying if you get COVID-19 it's only about 2.6% of all the people that do die of COVID-19, and only 2% of all the people who get it die of COVID-19. So if you do a little bit of math, you can go do it yourself, you will see that about 520 out of 1 million people in this age group would die, sorry, I didn't say it again, will die of COVID-19. So now you're comparing 6 people who had a bad blood clot, 520 people who are dead, and now you say, all right, with which are we rather going to go? Because we know we're not talking about eating muffins here. We know that we cannot escape the reality of that we're all going to meet COVID-19, and you just have to decide, do you want to meet COVID-19 before you've had your vaccine or after you've had your vaccine? So this one is very simple. It makes clear the concept. Do not fear the vaccine. Fear the virus. I'm young and healthy. I don't mind getting COVID-19. Well, look, I think we've largely addressed it in the previous question. But, you say you're young and healthy. Let me tell you, your chances of dying from COVID-19, even if you are young, healthy, and you have no comorbidities, is still 520 in 1 million people will die from it. It would appear as if it's this interferon business that's not working so well. So can I ask you, have you had your genetic testing for your interferon system before you make this informed decision that you don't want the vaccine? No, of course you haven't, because it's not even available. So you just simply don't know. You don't know what you're talking about. You may actually die from it. But let's say you're right. Let's say you're right. And you're actually not going to get particularly ill when you do get COVID-19. Well, please remember, you are going to turn your body into a living, breathing virus factory. And we've spoken about it. You understand how it works. You're going to be exhaling these COVID viruses everywhere you go. And in all likelihood, you will be completely asymptomatic, so you won't even know. Obviously, you're not going to be coughing. You're going to be talking to people. Like your mother, and your grandfather, and your brothers, and the teacher, and your lecturer, and whoever. So the fact is, you become a magnificent spreader of COVID-19. Now, I hope that you realize it is your social responsibility not to allow that to happen. Okay, this one, very interesting one. There are nanochips in the vaccine which will mark me with the mark of the beast, and it can enslave me. Now, to be honest, I think if this one trips you up, I'm really not qualified to help you with it, but I am going to try. Look, I could tell you that nanotechnology is not that advanced. Yes, we can make microchips. We definitely can't make nanochips that can do these things. We very much hope to make them in 50 years from now. But right now, these things don't even exist, so don't let it bother you. It's impossible. I think an answer like that won't satisfy you, because you're going to think, well, Henry, what do you know? You're a surgeon. What do you know about nanotech? Maybe it is true. So, I'm rather going to invite you to start thinking about these things a little bit differently. And the crux of the matter is that you have to get comfortable with uncertainty, with not being 100% sure. And you need to realize it's okay. You don't always have to be 100% certain about everything. In fact, you can't be. If something seems highly, highly likely, your BS antennas need to say, well, okay, it's highly, highly likely that governments have invested billions and trillions of dollars into making a vaccine so that the economic devastation of COVID-19 can be stopped. And that scientists are actually just good people that want to help other people not die and not lose their jobs. Okay? Or maybe they're not. Maybe they're trying to get us. Well, okay, what's the chance of this thing that they're actually good people and they're trying to make a vaccine because they've got the right reasons? What are the chances of that being true? Let's make it a 95%. So there's a 5% doubt. Okay? Let's go with this thing about the mark of the beast and the nanochips and all of that. Nanotechnology, you really need to read up on it a bit. You know, nanochips, we're not even nearly there. It doesn't exist. We can make special paint, we can make special golf balls. Yes, we've got a scanning electron microscope, and we are extremely excited about nanotechnology, and we hope that in 30 years from now, we will be able to make something as wonderful as a small little nano robot that works with quantum computing that can actually go into the human body and do things like, for instance, cure us of cancer. We're definitely dreaming of it. We're not nearly there. So, but still, you must concede, you must agree with me that this idea about the nanobots and the beast, the chances of it being true is, let's say, at the very most 5%. So can I be 100% certain that this one is not true and that one is true? No, I can't. I cannot be 100% certain, but that is okay. I still need to make a 100% decision. Am I going to have the vaccine, yes or no? I cannot step back from it and say, not for me, thank you. This thing is intimidating me. Not for me, thank you. I cannot say that, but because by not making a decision, I am making a decision. I am making a decision for becoming a COVID factory, and I am making a decision for taking my chances with my innate immune system. So do you hear what I'm saying? I'm imploring you, use your BS antennas and don't let people manipulate you, because that's what they're trying to do. Who are these people that are trying to manipulate? I don't know. Maybe it's the people who are making the personal protective equipment. They would very much like for COVID-19 to carry on forever because they're getting rich. I don't know. You can, they are whoever they are. That's not important. The importance here is get comfortable with a bit of uncertainty. That is okay. Next question. I've heard that I can still get COVID-19 after the vaccine, so why bother? Well, look, it's very much the same answer. But again, it's a statistics thing. You know, yes, you can actually still get COVID-19 after the vaccines, but your chances of dying from it is virtually zero. Your chances of being able to turn into a COVID factory and passing it on to someone else is very small, and your chances of getting ill from it is very low. So you have, what are you comparing? Are you comparing without the vaccine, it's this bad. With the vaccine, it's this bad. No, that's not what you're comparing. You're comparing without the vaccine, it is that bad. With the vaccine, it is this bad. So it becomes easy to say, yes, you know, even though it is true you could still get COVID-19, it makes 100% sense to have the vaccine. Lastly, getting to an old Roman, that was his name, Publius, whatever, he said, Civis pacem parabellum. Now this is normally something that you will see on the arms of big brave soldiers with scars across their faces, and they've got wild looks in their eyes. What does it mean? It means, if you want peace, prepare for war. Now, I don't know about you, but I have had enough of COVID-19. I have had enough of not seeing people's faces, of not being able to go to parties, of not meeting my friends, of not hearing what other people have to say. The social separation is not normal. It's not the new normal. It is the new abnormal. I've had enough of people dying. I've had enough of working in a hospital where suddenly the ICUs are full of people on ventilators with very little prognosis. I've had enough of people losing their jobs, of people not having money. There's only one way for us as humanity to stop the fire and slowly but surely extinguish the fire so that eventually it will just be a flicker here and there and then it will burn out altogether. We need to get our adaptive immune system to deal with the problem instead of our innate immune system. And for that, we need the vaccine. I thank you for listening to this.